Okay, let's get on to the next texture here. We're going to be exploring the water drop principles here, being a more graphic tone like this is, which is a lot more crisp, and then we will explore basically calming our colors down to achieve a more realistic water drop. Now if I zoom in here, you'll see that you have a lot of different things in the underlying texture of the leaf. I'm just sneaking this in so people will know how to create even more diverse textures. I've sanded this with sandpaper. Sometimes you can airbrush coffee and burn it when it hits the surface. That will create a more, I guess, crispier part of the leaf. But one thing to mention here is that the actual water drops, I'm going to zoom in real close here, look very commercialized, meaning again they're very crisp. So I would apply a technique like this maybe on a sign if you're doing like it says cold beer or something like that, or any type of cartoony animation type stuff. So what I've done here is base coated this whole leaf. I have set it up with the clear contact paper, cut out the leaf, base coated it green, and then this is actually what we're going to do first here is come in and do the basic rudiments of a water drop, and then we will come in on a real picture of a flower, and I will calm all the colors down and make this look more realistic as we go along. Then let's get started here. Basically what I have here is a leaf that I've taken the clear contact paper and put over a piece of canvas. I cut out the leaf. It's a pretty simple leaf, but again this is just for teaching purposes. I went ahead and base coated this a powdery green, and as you can see, I will zoom out a little bit here. One thing that's kind of cool is anytime you do real crisp imagery like this, and this is more of a graphic type way to do the water drop, and then later on we will move on to the more calmer, realistic way to do the water drop. But when you take a real crisp image like this, and after you airbrush everything on here, if you cover it back up and do some real fuzzy, you can see this real fuzzy wishbone here, do some real fuzzy no-nonsense type stuff in the background, it will actually create a lot of realism pretty easily. So that principle of realism has to do with a lot of different things. You'll see that more and more as you go along doing different types of textural effects, but edge acuity against a real soft fuzzy background really pops an image out, and sometimes it even saves you from having to do a real intense background anyway. Now there's two ways to do water drops here. This is a more crisp type of way to do it. And again, I think I did this about 3 or 4 years ago as a demonstration for my classes, but one of the mistakes I made, I feel I made, is that I used black for the little shadow here underneath the drop. So that's going to be a big no-no, because again, shadows for the most part can be whatever color that the water drop is sitting on. So in the demonstration I'll do today, I will actually get rid of all this black. And again, I tell my students all the time, your skills are going to grow more when you actually learn more and more about color. You'll be quite pleased with how things turn out as opposed to coming in with some real loud black. I will go ahead and start cutting this and then base coat it with an opaque type color like a powdery green. Anytime you cut something out and then you expose it, try to roll it against its own pressure like this, especially if there's a layer of paint or graphics underneath this. It's very much worth it to take your time when you're exposing this mask here. Okay, then I'm just going to come in with this powdery opaque type green, nothing fancy, just to give this a commercial look of a leaf. Go ahead and hit this with a heat gun. Anytime you use a heat gun, you want to make sure you stay back as far as you can so you don't bake the surface here. So a lot of things get destroyed with heat guns, especially t-shirts. Once you destroy a t-shirt, it's over. Okay, now cutting these things out, one thing you want to do, I taught this just a few days ago, and I told all my students that if you have a picture of a flower or something like that, proof that water drops are actually crisp like this will be basically just looking at your windshield when it's raining outside. So what I said earlier is that for the most part, realistic water drops are not crisp, but some of them are, depending on the nature of how the subject was photographed, and so on. But I gave the example that if you have about 200 water drops on a flower, I would say maybe 12 or 13 of them might be really acute and crisp. So it's not a sacrilege to make them crisp, but for the most part, if you make too many of them crisp like this, it may end up looking very commercialized, and you go through all this stuff by trial and error. So as I'm cutting these out, I want to make sure that I'm turning in a circular motion here. A lot of the students and me sometimes will actually make some of these jaggedy, and it just will not look believable. So shape is very important when you're cutting these out. So as you can see, and I am always a big fan of working huge. I like to do in-your-face type of artwork. That, let's say if we have a canvas or an image that's maybe 3x4, 4x4, or even maybe a wall mural, this is very arduous to sit and try to cut all these out. So I told you that you're going to have to cut some of them out because some of them in their own nature look crisp. But let's say if we got 200 to 400 of these things on a wall or some type of, whatever type of image, how do you actually speed this process up? So we'll definitely get into that after I do the basic way of rendering them right now. Let's go on to the first rule here, which is basically we do not need some really cheesy loud black when we're coming in here to hit the back end of these. So I'm going to go ahead and get a flow going on my mask here so I don't come in here and jeopardize this image. And this is a color called phthalo green. I'm going to come in on the back of these, and they're all going to get the same sweep here. This is a transparent phthalo green. You can also use phthalo blue if it's a blue leaf or a mintish tone of leaf. If the leaf is brown, you would basically use a dark brown on the back end of this, presupposing that this thing is reflecting and refracting light in a transparent mode on whatever surface it's sitting on. So I'm going to come in here, and again, I'm not going to krylon back and forth here. I'm going to come in here, and I'm letting the paint catch up with the surface. I don't want to slop this thing up and just come in here and kill all these edges. So this is the first edge. And I'm going to let the heat gun basically help the paint saturate. Now that that's saturated, I can go in a little bit closer now, and you can see the beauty of these phthalo colors is that they almost become like a black tone without using black. So this is the first thing I'll do. You just want to spray more on the plastic here than you do inside of the perimeter of the cut here. So I'm going to smear this back, and then I will move on to my white. So what I'm going to do with my white here is the basic contrasting element to this darker green edge here. And again, black would make this look horrible. So let these darker colors saturate into the eye, and especially when they're clear coated, they will be a lot more appealing. So this is the contrasting element here. I'm going to come in with the white, and the trick to this is to, for the most part, get in and out. Don't come in here and slop up a bunch of white here. I'm going to take my white, I'm going to come in with a heat gun, and I'm going to get in and out and basically shade the opposite side of these. Now the mask is still on here, as you can see, and the heat actually lets the paint catch up with the surface a lot quicker. Now this is very important when you're doing water drops, because the tendency is to force this white onto a surface, and you will end up just powdering the whole water drop out. So you can see I'm spraying lightly and evenly here, more on the plastic than anything, and the heat gun is actually helping me. And I'm going to get brave here, put a little dot in the middle and just feather that out, and let that catch up with the surface and go on to the next one here. And the less is more rule definitely applies when you're doing these water drops. The heat is helping me here. So I will do all these with the white the same way. Okay, that's saturated good enough for now. So I'm going to take my little mask off here. I want to bring over these pieces that we cut out before here. And this is an important part. I'll zoom in here a little bit. That you make sure that when you're aligning or remasking these plastic pieces, that the main thing that we're looking for is right here on this white edge. I'm going to do this one and wipe the dry erase marker off of that. And stay on the money with this. You cannot lie when you get to this point. You cannot lie with this edge here. Lie meaning try to manipulate it. Stay right on the money for how that curves, and it will pay off in the end. So I'm going to come in with the dark green again, and against this mask I'm going to go ahead and put a cast shadow and keep my symmetry with every single drop here going this way, going that way right there. And this white edge against this dark green edge, when I pull the mask off, will manipulate the eyeballs, which is the fun part of this. And again, after this, we will talk about speeding this whole arduous process up. And while I'm at it here, I will go ahead and add a few more dots, since I got the white in my airbrush. Now this highlight here, just pay attention to your photo reference, and this is the more subdued part of the highlight, which we will come in with a needle dipped in pure white and refine that. The eye will catch the refining data from a distance. If I leave it like this, it may look a little bit more processed and brushed. So in composition with highlighting, you need a softer fading highlight, and then you will come in and dot it at the end. Okay, let's move along here. I'm going to take my dark green and make sure I get all the water that may be displaced in the airbrush out to the side here, so I don't bring it onto the surface and totally slop this thing up. But here's your landing port here to basically go in and nail your edge down. Get a flow down on your plastic there and lightly come in. And again, do not krylon back and forth and wave the airbrush back and forth, because you may end up with some very disruptive patches that may screw this thing up in the end. So I'm going to come in here, let the paint catch up with the surface. I'm also going to sneak this heat gun in, because again, the point with all this, just like in the white, is just to get in and out as quick as possible without having to saturate a lot of paint. Less is more when you're doing something like this. So this contrasting dark green edge against the white edge is what brings this all together in the end, and it manipulates the eyeball. And I can fade them out a little bit. I'm going to wisp. Now, in class we got into a debate one time about, well, how do you actually know that the shadows are going to be here and the light is going to be over here, or vice versa, okay? And, or in this case, the light's over here. Well, I guess if you own the sun, then you basically can say that the highlight is wherever you want it to be. But the answer to that is it depends on the photo reference and exactly what area the sun is actually shining on it. So this is the rudiments of water drops, but the highlight, the white part, could be on this side, and the dark part could be on that side with maybe a shadow going that way. So light source, again, if you own the sun, then you dictate where the light is going to be. So this is just a kind of a cookie cutter way to understand how light penetrates through water and how it sits on a surface. So let's get real close here. I want to see exactly how this is looking as I get closer. I really want to get in here and make this almost, again, not black because we don't have black, but really, really dark green in these middle areas here of the shadow. So I really, really want to pierce that out. It's super duper close here. And give all those the same sweep. So I will go ahead and expose the mask here and do some more highlighting. And we'll go ahead and take all these off now. And again, if you got paint on your fingers, make sure you try to clean it off as much as possible. I'm going to try to be as careful as I can. I'm going to expose these here. And one thing that's very interesting with this is I always tell my students that after you do this exercise and you spend a couple hours on it, that you'll actually go upstairs in the bathtub and you'll start staring at your shampoo bottles. But zooming out here, you can see that you got to be careful where you cut, And again, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm always flying through this, but after you take the contact paper off, these white highlights against the dark green edge here will manipulate the eyeball. So what I'm going to do in a minute is come in and hit it one more time with the white in the heat gun, just to kind of flash this back out and give it more of a glow. Then dip a needle in some thick white and dot these other areas over here where I did some freehanding in. I'm going to go ahead and shade the edge of this leaf just to bring the eye in a little bit. Take my contact paper off here. Okay, next let's talk about fixing little weird jaggedy edges that ruin your day. And this is what the benefits of having a shield are. And I want to really emphasize that you make sure that your shield is as thin as possible. I always sand my shields down so that they don't bleed when you're painting with them. But this little jaggedy area, since I'm very anal retentive in this case, this is bugging me. So I'm going to come in here with my shield, and that's why they're called freehand shields. I'm just going to crop that off a little bit, but make sure you let the paint catch up with the surface. And you can start repairing edges. I'm going to do another one over here. And whatever fits, just go in, spray lightly and evenly, which is a big rule. And you can start cropping those back out. Now if overspray gets away from you too, like in this edge, I can come in here and look, I can actually roll this to whatever it fits, which I'm going to use right about there, and lightly dust that back down. And if you have to, and normally if you have a lot of texture on the leaf, stippling and a lot of other things will hide any incongruence between the shadow and the shape of the water drop. So I'm going to move on to the white again to come in here and flash these hot points out, and then dot this at the end. Okay, let's move on to the next part here. What I'm going to do is come in and actually not stop on this white here, because this keeps sinking on me, which comes in handy because when I come in here and pierce this out with this real thick white, it gives me this really cool glow look to it that I think that only an airbrush can achieve. So make sure you're on the money here again with your shield, and just come in here, let the paint catch up with the surface. Again, do 10 loop-de-loops to make sure you got pure white coming through. And I'm going to come in here and just put this little glow and just dance around a little bit, and then hit it with the heat gun. And with the heat gun on here, I'm going to come in and re-emphasize some of this. Just kind of jump around a little bit. And you can see how it gives it a really nice little glow there. So I'm going to do all of these like this. Really pop that out there. Coming down here. And again, as long as I'm just kind of in the center here, I just kind of get in and out with all these. And this is the advantage of a loose mask here. See how it gives a little glow there. That third glow with the white that I'm, or actually the second glow that I'm looking at there. So you can see definitely how sneaking that shield in gives it that second glow that we need on top of that first layer of white there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is come in, and I want to talk about highlighting a little bit. In composition, you need two types of highlights. You need a softer, fuzzier type of highlight, and then you need a more acute dot type of highlight. So I've already got, for the most part, the softer highlights on here. So now I'm going to take a needle, an old airbrush needle or whatever, and just kind of dot the middle of these highlights here. And I'm using a needle just because a paintbrush is way too much sometimes, way too heavy. So I'm going to come in here and do a basic dagger stroke with this needle. You can even smear that out a little bit. This is actually what the eye picks up from a distance here, is this a cute little dot in the middle of all this other stuff. And you definitely do not want to get too carried away with these little dots. Look at your photo reference and just kind of sneak those in there. Anything you don't like, you can kind of smear back. Sometimes they will taper off there. So I'm going to come in with my blue now, and it's going to be a transparent blue. Water does refract a blue hue depending on how intense the light's hitting it. But I'm coming here with some transparent blue on this side and this side, but I'm going to stay off this white, really piercy, glowy part here, and that's actually going to help this whole thing in color theory to look more believable that it is water and that it is transparent here. We'll go ahead and bring this piece back in. You can see that there's a blue hue that really works here, and the blue actually pops out more, I think, if you have a darker leaf. So the blue, again, just presupposes that there's a transparent water drop here. You can see through this thing, but it's also a good color balance as you're crawling along. Okay, so coming in here, so I don't mess this thing up, I'm going to come in here with my contact paper, and this is kind of like being on Photoshop or something like that. You can actually preface a tint or a tone before you spruce something up. So I'm going to get my flow going off to the side here. Now, since I'm an airbrush teacher, I always have to think of ways that students can actually get more chances before they totally destroy something. So this is something that definitely comes in handy, and I always make them do this, whether it be portraits or anything. But come in here just with a little bit of blue and practice how this is going to look off to the side. And with this blue, it is a transparent phthalo blue. I'm going to stay off the white point here, or the white edge, the middle of this white edge. I'm going to come in here, just kind of practice these so that I can see what it looks like before I go on to the actual surface here. I'm going to go ahead and expose this. I think I got it down. You can see the white basically looks blue just from the titanium shift that's happened. But again, now that I've already practiced, I'm going to come in here, let me zoom in a little bit here, and just nail down the right and the left hand side of all of these. Don't get too carried away. Get too carried away, you're going to kill this. But that's probably good enough for that one. Come in and do all these really, really light. And again, this is a more commercial type thing to do, but sometimes you'll see this in photorealistic flowers and so on. So as we zoom out here, you'll see that that definitely helps it in its own little color theory there. So what we're going to do right now is go ahead and move on to the real deal here, and try to make these look a little bit more believable on an actual project here. Okay, let's go ahead and continue here. This is a painting that I've been working on. I went out one day and took a picture of a flower here, and you'd be quite surprised with just isolating whatever type of image you have with a white background like this. This edge acuity against a stark white background actually creates a lot of realism pretty quickly. So flowers are real fun to take pictures of. Now on camera, this may not show up as a salmon type of color. It's kind of a salmon / orange type of color tone here. And realism, I will be making videos on a lot of this stuff later on in the year, but a lot of realism and hyperrealism is usually dependent on really just calming down your colors. So if you take a basic color like orange or whatever and you add some white and gray to it, it will actually allow you to control the paint getting too dark. I'm going to go ahead and start off and put some transparent red on my airbrush here. This is like a deep red. And the water drops can be different intensities on different areas of the flower. Some areas may have more of a red shadow with the water drops, and some areas may have more of an orange shadow. But regardless, the shadows are going to be really, really calm and muted down. So I'm going to add 1 drop of white to my red mixture here, like so. And that will actually keep the paint from saturating too much. Kind of calm the color down. A drop of gray. And then I will see where I'm at. So I'm going to go off to the side and test this now and see where I'm at, but that looks like a pretty good start there. I don't know if the camera's picking a lot of that up. Okay, I'm going to come in now. I got this airbrush filled with the reddish gray color, and this airbrush basically has the white for the highlight of the water drop. So I'm going to come in here And what I'm going to do is use a shield to basically trap the back end of these water drops here. I think what we'll do is go ahead and zoom in. This one's almost like a perfect circle that I'm going to do here. So you can see that I will test my flow on the shield here. And here's the back end of the water drop. Then I'm going to come in with the white, and I'm going to do just like we did on the more graphic-y water drop here. Make sure this thing is flush, and it takes some craftsmanship to get in here and not slop everything up. So I'm going to come in here with the white part of this, get the water out of the airbrush here. I'm going to let that dry. Then I'm going to sneak that shield back in to trap a little shadow. So this actually speeds the whole cutting process up. Color is going to be real important when you're doing stuff like this, because again, these transparent paints can get really, really loud. But that will actually be a quicker way to do these water drops. And again, here's my little piercing point there. And if you zoom out, you'll see that we pull that off pretty quickly. Now, I'm still going to come in with my little needle dot and so on. I'm still going to come in and flash out the glow point, again, which is the white part here. But I have to let this paint catch up with the surface first. Okay, let's cruise along here on the next one. One thing you can do is come in here and just kind of do random little edges like this. You don't have to do like complete circles all the time. If you pay attention to a lot of water drop references, you will see that lighting is hit and miss as shadows are. And I'm switching airbrushes here again. I'm going to go to my light area of this water drop. But edges and shadows are actually pretty random when you're trying to figure them out. You can do an edge there like that, and maybe just kind of fade it out, and so on. And while I have this airbrush, I'll go ahead and trap a couple other little ones here. And look, I can go to the side of this and just do a little edge here. I can still do my little dots. We know that this helps it. I can just go to the side of some of these. And here's another one, which for the most part could be a complete circle, but just come down here. Now I'm going to sneak the heat gun in, because again, we have to let this white catch up with the surface. I do not want to powder this thing out, because again, we want to try to retain some of the transparency of these water drops. So now that I have some heat on there, it will actually support this white now, and I can come in and pierce that out a little bit more. And my little one here is probably ready to be emphasized, so I will launch off of the shield here. Give that a glow and a little dot. Again, I'm trying to stay at an angle so everybody can see me here. And I think that I will go to a darker color in this area. And again, watch this. I could just randomly come in here and trap the back end of this. And this one should be ready for a shadow here. So this is a cool part. Watch this. I can come in here as long as this is dry, and I can just nail that little shadow down. I'm working really, really light, too dark, and cast that out like that. Just kind of cast it back. And then to finish chiseling the shape off, I can move over to the next little niblet of this shield and finish carving that out. You can see when you back off, it actually matches the surface a little bit more than something that has just a totally dominant, dark, transparent tone would. And let me align this here. And I do not have to totally match this shape, as long as you don't reposition wet paint. That's why I have paint on my arm, just to show students. and chisel and carve this little shadow out. Now, when I zoom in here, here's what's really cool about this. Notice right here, again, I did not have to crawl all the way around the perimeter of this water drop here because shadows actually sometimes dissipate. They just kind of fade off into the distance or whatever. So let me finish these up here. I'm going to put a dot on this one. Watch how the eye actually will pick this up from a distance. And again, a paintbrush may be too much, may be too heavy, but a needle just enables you to get in and out with a nice little cute dot. And this is the fun part. And I've not even done this one up here yet, so I'll just stay with these three. And since I got the dot on there, I'm going to wipe that paint off the needle and take the front of the needle, just kind of smear this back. This gives you a nice little highlight on all of these. Okay, I'm going to zoom in because I really got to be careful with this part of the color transition and the highlights and everything. I'm going to zoom in super close here so you really know how much blue to put on something like this. And even the blue can be calmed down with gray if you want it to. So what I'm going to do is just kind of lightly tint this side and this side so the camera may not pick it up, or it may. It's a bit too much there. Flash that back out. When you flash it out with white though, that's a good part of this. I'm going to come in one last time. Now it should come together because everything looks somewhat stale at this point, but when you come in with this glow at the end, it really helps it look more believable. And again, just kind of come across a little bit. Hit that with some heat. I'm going to trap this little highlight right here. The heat is your best friend. And I'm going to remask, or in this case, loose mask this little white area here. You can even roll these over. It's kind of cute if you do that. And I will zoom out here and see if I need to fix any more color blending that's going on these. So this is basically a way to set these water drops up without using black. Okay, so 2 hands back, what you can do, you can see the blue, you can see the white, you can see the little shadow, you can see the form starting to develop on this, but sometimes, again, depending what color the object is, in this case it's a flower, you can also take a transparent color that's in the color palette of what your subject matter is here. You can, at 2 hands back, I mean like 2 hands back, like 12 inches almost, I mean way back here, just lightly calm the right and the left hand side down over the blue. And it really, again, controls the titanium shift that may be going on. The point is you can keep going back and forth and relayering these transparent paints. So you can see sneaking that red in at the end there with the white and the blue is what I call lollipop in your paints. These are transparent paints, the red and the blue, but they actually just give an illusion of transparency even though all these other colors were muddied down. So you can keep reworking these, just make sure you don't kill this back end here, and eventually you will achieve a lot of depth in these water drops. Also, I want to footnote here that I've done really 3 cookie cutter shapes here. This is an actual project that I'm working on, so when I get done with this, I will actually take my time and draw more believable shapes. But a few of these can be this shape. All of these actually are relevant shapes. But again, some of them are going to be half crescents and very random and drippy and so on. So moving along here, you can see that for the most part we're working kind of like we did in the crisper realm earlier, but you can also come in, it's not a sacrilege to do a lot of freehand little water drops, and they can be soft like this. I'm going to try to wing this as I go here. They can be kind of drippy and so on. It can be really subdued where they're not even there. I just wing this as I go here, little crescents. And they can stay that way. They don't have to be overdone. Watch what I do here. I'm going to come in, just set this one up. That's kind of the shadow there. And I can just lightly break out an indication that there's a softer water drop. And so on. So you get this type of stuff too that goes on with water drops. Let's do this one down here. I got my little stripe there, my referencing point. I'm going to go in and split that from the reference line. And you can be pretty random with this type of stuff. And you have all these little weird types of shapes that happen. This part right here, for the most part, is dry, so I'm going to come in and pierce that out a little bit. Get real close. Maybe put a dot that's running. You can see how you take on some form pretty easily. So this is what I'm saying, where some of them are crisp, but for the most part, a lot of them are like this too. This is ready to be pierced out here. Be pretty random with that. And I will stop at this point, and hopefully you've seen a couple different ways to do these. Again, I want to go back to saying that if you have an actual project like this, I will maybe easily have 200 water drops, and I would say for the most part about 12 or 13 of them I might do this way, but for the most part there's going to be a lot of freehanding, just like I did here. Just trap edges, learn how to do it in a crisp way and in a soft way, and I try to have fun doing it. That wraps up these two exercises of doing water drops. We will now move on to the next demonstration, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.